Boom! What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. I'm your host, Alan Sakyan. Very excited to be talking about a sustainable and fulfilling way of life. We have Ari Nazem joining us on the show. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, super pumped, super pumped. Very grateful that we met at Junyun's event just this last weekend. Very grateful for him and his thought leadership and bringing people like us together to continue interacting and just even got to give the man the shout out, Interdependent Capitalism.
That's the one.
Such a good book, guys. Check it out. Junyun's such a thought leader in so many regards. So is Ari. I'm very excited to be talking to Ari about this subject. For those that don't know the background, Ari went to Nueva High School, the Nueva School that is in Hillsborough, right in the Bay Area. And then he started a house system there, a cross-grade house system. We'll be talking about that. He then made Swap. He started Orion Creative. He did some work with Carnegie Mellon, with Neosensory. And then he is now working on the Pantheon, which we're going to be unpacking in detail. And we'll be talking about a lot regarding building solutions for renegotiating our relationship with technology and with each other. And this is great because Ari is 19. He is a symbolic systems major at Stanford, sophomore.
Freshman, yeah.
Freshman. And let's jump into this from this big history perspective. So, we find ourselves as stewards of Earth now. And there's a lot of complications with 8 billion people, exponential technology. So what is your current synthesis on the state of humanity?
Yeah, I think what's happening right now is really interesting, especially from kind of a young person's perspective and seeing kind of how technology is influencing my generation and the generations a little bit younger than me, which I say generations because I think there's some research going on at Stanford that we were actually talking about this earlier, is that it's looking like, whereas a generation used to maybe be 20 years or around that time frame, now it can get down to 2 or 3 years because the rate of technology is going so fast that you're actually seeing these huge generational gaps between, me and you, 7-year difference, or me and my sister, a 2-year difference, radically different in the way that we use technology or even interact with each other. And so that's, I think, this really interesting landscape we're now in, where you have these micro generations, every 2-3 years you have kind of a whole different group of people, but being served by the same education system, by the same kind of ways of living, right? One of the things I think we'll talk a bit about is kind of how the built environment stays the same. It's really hard to change the built environment. We'd have to get in here with sledgehammers really to make any of this stuff move around. But technology is blasting off, right? It's on this exponential curve, and then kind of caught in the middle is culture, right? Is culture kind of trying to anchor itself between these two forces, and it's really getting pulled apart. And so that's I think,
an interesting visual.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, so we got this physical world that we live in, and then the digital world is way easier malleable, manipulable, and then we're stuck in the culture, which is kind of being like, what is going on?
Right. Yeah, and it's really interesting how those are kind of in play with each other, right? Because you have technology, which I think is kind of the frame that everything is kind of happening in, right? By technology, I don't mean of course I mean the iPhone and everything, but I also mean, agricultural evolution as being a technology being a mix of like kind of culture, like a knowledge system with like a physical built environment implement. So the know-how of how to farm, and then the hose and the shovels and things like that, and the plows. And then, the industrial revolution, the know-how of the assembly line and manufacturing and kind of if this then that, and then the built environment of the factory and the loom and the the mechanical implements of that. And now we're having a similar thing where it's this idea of the connected world and the connected web with the implementation of it in our apps and in our phones and things like that. And so that's kind of the frame, I think, is technology. And then within that, you have the built environment, which is very static. And then you have kind of, like I said, culture in between. And those two are really in play a lot, because if you see, I think in Sapiens they talk about how the built environment in the medieval ages, a lot of the kids would live in these big halls. They'd sleep in the same halls, right? Where everyone could see each other. And you'd come, all your public life had to be conducted in the town square, right? Or in the market or in the forum or whatever that is. And that's because their society is built on reputation, right? It really matters who you are because, there's only a couple thousand people living in these communities. So it really matters, are you going to return that loan? Are you going to be a nice person? Are you going to do these things? Those things really matter in those contexts.
There's no digital space to go anonymous.
Right, exactly. And that's reflective of, and maybe they had a masquerade day, but that was the one day they were anonymous. And that was, this whole thing. That's because their whole society is built on identity, right? That's why last names are like William's son, right? Or even in Iran, I think my last name is my great-grandfather's profession, which is just the organizer of the bazaar. It's Nazem, which just means organizer. So they cut off, I guess, the bazaar part. But we just started doing that, and that's kind of around the time period of kind of the Industrial Revolution and stuff like that, when it used to be all about who are you the son of, what have you done, what's your reputation, and now it's all about parents give their kids their own bedroom with a door they can lock. Right, you put up your own posters on the wall, you do your own thing. That's because we have this idea now that, it doesn't matter what the other kids at school say about you. It's you're beautiful for you. It's the individual, as opposed to valuing yourself in the community. It's now valuing yourself as the individual. And the built environment reflects that, right? The bedroom versus the hall, right? You can go to the grocery store, you don't even have to look at anyone to get your business done. It's not in a town market, right? You don't have to have these relationships with buyers and sellers yourself. It's all kind of abstracted. It's one level up, and that's because of the culture, right? The culture is saying we want to be individual, we want to be anonymous, we want to be self-contained, as opposed to this is a lot of stuff coming out at once.
This stream of consciousness is yummy. Keep delivering. It's so good.
Yeah, so that's kind of how the built environment and culture are playing with each other. Is but the thing is with that is that these changes kind of before used to be happening over hundreds of years or thousands of years, right? The Industrial Revolution even, it was only 200 years ago, but it still took a while to get there, and it spread across the world at a pretty slow pace. Now we're kind of having these like micro revolutions when someone releases a new app. That's a new format of interacting with other people. When someone releases
20 years, the genome went from $100 million to sequence to $100.
Absolutely, that's a revolution right there. And if you're looking at, Uber just coming a couple years ago, that's a completely different built environment, right? Yeah. This is a completely different idea of how life should be and will be. And like with Google's subsidiary Sidewalk Labs doing stuff with like moving sidewalks or adapting to different times of the day. That's stuff that has a profound impact on the way we live. And so to answer the question, very long-winded answer to the question, but the question of kind of where do we find ourselves right now? I think where we find ourselves is in culture being strained, being pulled by a built environment that is too static for what's happening now. It wasn't too static, back in 1500s or even 1700s, 1800s. Maybe even then it was getting too static. But now, people are living in the same 1950s floor plans with iPhones, and that doesn't work. Because in the 1950s, you want to go hang out with your friends, you go outside, you can do all these things. It doesn't matter that you have kind of this weird isolating room in your house. It doesn't matter that you're in these suburbs, which are these weird enclaves of nuclear families. It doesn't really matter because you go out onto the street to play with your friends. You go into the living room. That's the only place you can find those people, so that's where you go, right? And now we have a world that still looks like that physically, but now you can be on your computer and access all of it, so you don't even have to leave. And the implications of that are, there's a ton of health implications. The fact that you're not moving, the fact that you're not getting fresh air, the fact that you're not active.
The lack of looking at humans in the eyes.
Exactly. And there's huge emotional impacts, right? Human connection, we know, is so much more fulfilling than interacting with static photos on social media or even in FaceTime. There's a lot that you can lose even in stuff like that. And how often do you, some people FaceTime their friends a lot, but you don't FaceTime every person you talk to on the internet. Most of the time it's texting and stuff like this. So the huge drop in empathy that comes with that, especially for kids growing up, talking to their friends online and not building the repertoire in person. And also just mental health wise, being in a room, the same room every day in a hunched posture. There's a lot of great stuff we were talking about, kind of influence from the East. There's a lot of stuff that says, the way your body is the position you're in. And this is, I mean, Amy Cuddy, right? The second most watched TED Talk of all time is about how our bodies kind of influence our mindsets. And if you're hunched over, kind of staring at a screen, closed off, right? That's a big difference from
versus
moving around.
Shoulders back and moving around.
Active, reaching towards your goals as opposed to clicking towards them, right? Like these, it sounds like, whoa, I'm making a big stretch, but it does make a big difference when you kind of lose connection with your own body, which does have a much bigger, I think, impact on people's minds.
Let me take a synthesis stat.
Yeah.
Or a stat to synthesize. Let's see what I can do here. Okay, so you started us off talking about, this all has to do with time. Let me see if I can explain how that you have this, first you start off these micro generations now, right? We're all the way down to this, and the technology scale of things is now within just 2 or 3 years, a generation of this group of 2 to 3 years,
right,
of like 15 to 17 year olds, but then there's the 13 to 15 year olds, what tech they're using, etc. That they're using different tech, different ecosystems, and it's all in the digital sphere.
Right. There's
a physical sphere, culture's in the middle, there's the pull that's happening, what are we doing, how are we dancing with that? But then in the scale of time, you were explaining how the scales of these revolutions,
different speeds.
like a genome decreasing in cost like that in 20 years, you could barely push an item across the Silk Road for months.
Right.
It took
right.
months. Yeah. So
right.
this is the scales now are crazy in comparison. So that seems like to be a pressing theme is time and culture being smashed between the physical and the digital.
Yeah, and what I mean when I say culture is getting smashed, and I talked a lot about kind of how built environment influences culture, but what I mean by culture is getting pulled apart is what I was talking about with someone in a room alone, and we've seen kind of how anxiety rates have gone up in recent years. I think in the 80s it was about like 15%, 18% of college students said they had anxiety. Now it's up to 40%, right? You look at in the 1950s, I think it was, you have the average American has 3 close friends, now they have 2, right? Just kind of going down on these metrics that I think mean a lot because we feel them. And I think you can look around and maybe it's because we're talking about it more, and I think that's part of it, right? You can't rule that out. But I think we're also seeing a lot of these kind of mental health crises and just well-being standards really, really plummeting at the hands of our environments not adapting to the way technology is going. And our culture not being able to because it's stuck in the built environment.
It's stuck in the built environment, and it's also stuck in the biological systems, which evolve over much slower time periods than the digital systems. This is a very, very crucial point: the physical world versus the digital world, and what's happening in the pulling apart of culture. I'm really glad you took us there with the big history. That's beautiful. So then, now this is cool because then you, as at 19, are seeing this. And I think this also has to do with like a testament of like, a strong family, strong upbringing, strong community for you. Absolutely. And then, doing Nueva school, right? These things coming together have made your perspective kind of why it's so strong and multidisciplinary. And you're like, I see all these problems. I'm going to make like a really powerful like work, life, and community solution to this. Pre that, tell us about how everything got started for you with Nueva School. How did you even figure out that that's where you wanted to go? Like, what were you like when you were younger getting into that realm?
So I'm from the Bay Area. I'm from Silicon Valley. My parents immigrated here from Iran, and they didn't just immigrate themselves, they immigrated with the whole crew. So my dad's side and my mom's side came, and I was very much, my mom's side lived a lot closer to us, so very much raised kind of in a mini Persian community there with my grandma and my aunt and everyone.
Do you know what year that was, your peeps came over?
They came over right before the revolution, so it wasn't because necessarily of the revolution, but I think the water was getting a little bit hot, and they came, I think 75, 76.
When the Shah was getting getting bounced out?
Yeah, right before, I think.
Okay.
They just shot over right before, and one of my aunts came over later after the Iran-Iraq War. So a little bit of a trickle.
I was like 9 years old when that was happening.
Yeah.
It was fascinating for me. I don't know why I was taking interest as a 9-year-old, but at any rate, it's good to have you with us, you know.
Yeah.
And I just want to bring up the tensions and the global narrative for
For
what
sure.
we should be concerned with. You know, my brothers and sisters are scattered all over the planet, and I just want to throw that in. Go back to what you were saying.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
And,
welcome to the United States of America.
Yeah, you meet a lot of the Persian people I think you'll meet in the U.S. Are either my age-ish because they're the kids of the immigrants of that period. So a lot of first-gen kids around my age. And then you also get kind of the parents, and then you also get a lot of PhD students still coming now. But raised kind of with that context in Silicon Valley, and my parents were kind of both on the tech boom, and made their livelihoods that way. And so that was a big part of just our context growing up, was kind of knowing what was going on, and my parents having the latest stuff in the house, just because that's what they were working on and that's what they needed for their jobs. And especially what my dad needed for his, because he was working with Yahoo at the time, and that was right on kind of the internet stuff. So that was kind of, you know, the talk in the household is kind of about this stuff growing up, and also just coming from another place in the world, not necessarily seeing it just as an economic thing that's happening, but seeing it in the context of the rest of the world, and being told, you know, you're growing up, you know, saying, you know, you come from this long history, this long line of people from this other place, and that kind of grounding you in the ancient time period, or the grounding you in 2,000 years ago, and giving you a reason to care about that time period and not just the now. Because I think a lot of people raised in Silicon Valley really care a lot about the now, and that's beautiful. And thankfully I was given a little bit of perspective of, well, where do you come from and where are we coming from as a species too? And I think that is definitely intertwined with my Persian heritage, because my mom was very passionate about making sure she transmitted that to us, and that kind of giving us the ancient perspective. But
that's so important.
Yeah,
that's so important. We all Armenian here, and
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very similar in just how blessed it is to be able to have this very interesting cross-cultural upbringing.
Right.
Yeah, because then you get those two perspectives of like, what is Armenia or Iran like? What is now you're living in the United States? What is that like? And then the second language is also very fascinating for what that does to
like development and stuff like that. Yeah, and I think it makes it so that you kind of have to think about the forces that are acting on you and that you're playing within, especially as, like, you know, you realize the stuff as you get older, you're just kind of playing with it when you're a kid. But you know, you realize, oh, what does it mean to be a first generation kid, and where do my people even come from? Or I don't even know too much about this country that my parents are from, and learning about that, and then kind of getting stuff in context. So that's definitely one way to zoom out and kind of see where we are, is having to think about where do I come from myself, is a great way to start with that. So I went to a Catholic school until about 4th grade, right next to my house. I was like 5 minutes away, and we're not Catholic. Which was an interesting dynamic when we were there, because I think, you know, even today I'm probably one of the like 20 of the kids from my grade that can grow a beard, or, you know, like just very few number of people that looked like me at that school. And so in that environment, I definitely hung on to that. I think that fact that I think Persians are considered Caucasians or something. So I leaned really hard into that, and I was like, well, you know, I'm not Arab, I'm whatever, I'm Caucasian, right? Persians are Caucasians, I'm one of you guys. So I definitely...
One of you guys? Did I just hear you say that? Yeah, that's right. Be careful with being one of us guys. You know, all of them have been infiltrated. Nobody holds monopoly on ignorance in this planet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I absolutely agree. But yeah, just being in a context that's very different from kind of the context I was raised in, and trying to kind of conform to that. And that as being kind of a social thing, but from an academic perspective, the way they were teaching wasn't really resonating with me. And my mom had always said, you know, school is part of your education, and not necessarily all of it, right? So she
lifelong learner, baby.
That's the goal,
learning,
right?
Yeah.
That's the goal. Yeah. And so she had us doing a lot of stuff over the summers and learning kind of, ahead of time. And so I was sitting in like my 3rd grade class, and this is a story a lot of Nueva kids actually talk about. But you'll be sitting there, and you finish the cursive or whatever it is, and you say, okay, can I do the next thing? And they say, well, you got to wait for the class to catch up. And you're like, oh, okay. And you wait. And I told my mom that, and she was like, all right, it's time to look at somewhere that lets you go at your own pace. And it was amazing because we found Nueva, and I went there, and I was, the dumbest kid in the room right off the bat. And
which you experienced again at Stanford later.
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
And like what I experienced when I moved to Silicon Valley. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it was great actually coming to Nueva before Stanford because I was already used to that. And I think when you get into an environment like that as a kid, you see it as really great. You're like, oh, this kid knows all this stuff about something else. This kid knows all this. You don't really have the ego yet or the sense of self yet to be like, oh, I suck because this guy's great. You're like, oh, this guy's really great. I'm not that great, but this guy's really, really, really awesome. And there were a lot of boys and girls at Nueva who were like that. And
these are like little local maximums of knowledge.
Definitely.
And so you can jump to a higher local maximum of knowledge, which you want to do throughout your life.
Definitely.
To continue yummy.
Right, the knowledge,
the knowledge, yeah.
And Nueva, the setting of Nueva, it's this like 33 acres of forest. The lower and middle school are 33 acres of forest up in Burlingame. And hands-on learning, it's based a lot on the principles of design thinking and on project-based learning. So a lot of times, the final project wouldn't be an essay or wouldn't be something like that. It'd be like, okay, how do you want to represent what you learned in this? And it was really fantastic for me. I think for some of the kids there, especially it happened I think more in the high school, but because in the middle school it was a smaller class size. It was only like 55 kids in my grade, and even maybe like 30 before 6th grade.
With how many teachers?
It was a really high ratio of students to teachers. Oh. I think in 4th grade, I remember when I came in, we had 4 teachers for the 30 kids.
That's so cool.
So a bunch, yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And really great attention from the teachers and stuff like that.
Bloom 2 Sigma is so damn true that one-on-one mentorship just rockets kids out multiple 2 standard deviations.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
For me, you gotta get that one-on-one mentorship. More.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there was a lot of that, and a lot of teachers that took special interest in kids that they saw going in certain directions, and there were certain math classes, but we had some kids that were just off with one guy doing something in the library because he was on a whole nother level or something like that. Yeah.
Little
shout out to you know who you are.
You know who you are. Yeah, on a whole nother level, and their skill set is being fostered.
Absolutely.
That's so critical. Their feedback is instantaneous. Like, oh, whoa, they're advancing fast. Give them more. Where are they going? Where's their interest?
You see some of some of these kids were just unbelievable. Like I came there from a very kind of a really wonderful, safe place. I think that the school I went to was really great. But I come into this place and kids are in the forts. That's what we called the forest. Kids are in the forts running around, and this one kid had made a whole economy based on the fertilizer crystals you'd find in the ground, and if you found more, he would devalue the price and all this stuff. I mean that kid's crazy. And just like really, really impressive stuff. Some people had like mining companies where they go, dig up like tree bark and ground it up to make like henna. It wasn't real henna, but they called it that. Or people would build these really, really beautiful forts and everything. And it's just a very magical place to be in. A lot of space to play and a lot of space to like get dirty and
that acreage,
hands-on, which I think is really important. Especially we were talking about the physical stuff and kids interacting in the physical world and building stuff with their hands, not just with the keys. And so that was a really, really wonderful experience growing up there. So I was there 4th grade, 5th grade, and then 6th grade. The middle school, it's very similar to the lower school. We still went down to the fort, still did our stuff, and really started getting interested in design there. I had been interested in art. I had always been drawing and sketching everywhere, on little notebooks and little hotel, by the phone. They always have that little notepad, and we traveled a lot as a kid, and that's definitely a big part of my growth too.
What about graffiti? Did you tag anything along the way? A little no, any of that?
No, the first introduction I had to graffiti was in the high school. They had a class on graffiti in this 2-week period called intersession. When you get back from winter break, they had this thing on graffiti, and I took it. We didn't like tag anything for real, but it was cool that they had that.
Where'd you travel to?
That was actually probably, besides kind of Nueva and the learning environment fostered there, we went to 106 countries.
Oh my goodness.
From when I was a kid until I was 15. It's kind of when we slowed down.
Goodness.
And that was kind of really...
Damn.
My parents...
Sometimes only like a day or something in each, or 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think the shortest we'd ever do is like 3 days, like 2 or 3 days. Yeah,
Whoa.
and the longest would be like a week or 2 weeks or something.
100 plus countries.
Yeah, 106, which is just ridiculous. Like even thinking back on it, some of the places like blur, or you have to really go back and figure it out. But I'm really happy the way my mom did it, and I've only really realized this as I got older.
That's true. Shout out to mom.
Shout out to mom.
Yeah.
Love you very much.
Yeah. Moms always give like that, and then later you realize how much family it has given. Really.
Right.
Yeah.
And so she would have us, like, we didn't really know why, but she'd have us look at the Wikipedia pages and look at like the GDP and the PPP and the GDP per capita, PPP, and per capita, I said that, and like the Gini index and the HDI, like the Human Development Index, and Gini's for inequality. And she'd have us do all this other stuff and look at like the major imports and exports and their neighbors.
That's
and
great.
She really, I think, wanted to get at like kind of the axioms, like the things that happen over and over and over again as you look around the world. Like she'd always say neighbors hate each other because they've always had conflicts over the years.
Over that border, over religion.
Over the border, over religion. So we saw that all throughout the travels. You'd go to one country, you'd go to the other country, and they'd be roasting each other. The tour guides would just be sending shots at each other, basically, each place we went. And it was really cool. She'd kind of have these themes that we'd explore over time. One of the themes, very very morbid theme, but she had us explore genocide a lot. She wanted us to really understand that. And so I think we've been to pretty much the sites of most of the major genocides. We went to Armenia, went to Auschwitz, went to in Cambodia, we went to Rwanda, we went to Kigali. And
it's not morbid. We're getting ready to normalize that shit. Another day in genocide. Don't worry about it.
I know. I mean,
hang on.
The quote's another day in paradise.
Yeah, another day in paradise.
It's really crazy, and I think that was an unreal experience too, because there's like the 10-step framework for genocide. So like the first couple steps are about like dehumanizing, otherizing, us and them,
which is happening.
Sounds familiar. I know. All just a little bit of history repeating.
Exactly.
It's all good. Hey, what are you gonna do? Eat, drink, and be merry. You're a good kid, Ari. Keep up the good work. We're all counting on you.
This is so crucial that mom did this.
Yeah.
Family exposing young children to travel, and then to import, export, GDP, Gini.
Yeah.
This is so crucial. It really gives the true picture of how things are happening around the world outside of the little bedroom.
Right, outside the little bedroom. And I think there's one way to do travel, which is sunscreen on your nose and hitting all the best like Instagram photo spots, which is now kind of a more common thing. And there's the other way, which is a little bit deeper. And I won't like lie and say we didn't go sightseeing and we didn't go to the touristy spots and we didn't take the pictures, because we did. And some of the reflections I've done as I've gotten older, like we went to 14 countries on the African continent, and kind of understanding some of the the things that were at play there that I didn't realize as a kid. When you're going on a safari or you're doing stuff like that, it's where's the heritage of that from, right? That's a colonial thing, and kind of understanding where some of that comes from. And oh wow, we're staying at this beautiful resort on the Serengeti. What does that mean? Who's that at the benefit for, or at the cost of? And my roommate in college is from Kenya, and he's from a little bit outside of Nairobi. He's from Nakuru, which is a little bit more west. And just living with him and hearing his perspectives on stuff has absolutely kind of rewritten some of the ideas that I had about the travels that we did there, and how much I understood what was going on when we were visiting those countries.
It's so crucial to have friends from around the world that you can have great conversation with, ask questions about their life and their family and what was going on in that part of the world. So
crucial.
Important.
So crucial.
You gain a better, more well-rounded perspective of life. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think travel is huge, and I think it's something I'm still really interested in. I want to go back to a lot of the places that we went as an adult. As you know, being able to go some of the places that were maybe unsafe for us to go as kids.
Yes.
You know, or with the context that I have now, or the understandings that I'm continuing to develop, you know, going back and saying, okay, there were a lot of bullet holes in Sarajevo in Bosnia when we went. What, like, I noticed that when I was a kid, but what does that mean and where is that from? And I think as you get older, you start to put those things in perspective, but having the data in the back of your head, having seen those things, then everything kind of clicks when you're older. So
when you're reading the article about on Wikipedia about something, and then you go, "Oh my gosh, I saw that!
I saw it."
Yeah, and then it clicks in a deeper level. You can even experience that rereading a book a couple years later.
Definitely.
And you'll see that your new perspective on the world. You're just like, "Whoa, I'm absorbing this in a new way."
Right. Right. Or you know, a conclusion that's reached at the end that when you apply it to the beginning again, it puts everything in a whole new light, which is interesting.
So Nueva School plus travel were two of the big reasons why you are who you are.
Yeah, I would say. And I think mentorship, like what you were saying, the Bloom 2.
Yeah, Bloom 2 Sigma.
Bloom 2 Sigma.
So from both parents as well as teachers in school.
Absolutely. Yeah. So definitely a lot of that. I had a teacher, wonderful teacher, Kim Sachs, been a mentor to two of my best friends as well. And she saw me running around in the forts, you know, in like 4th grade, and she was like, "Hey, how about you come over to the engineering shop? They called it the iLab, the engineering lab," and got me in there and started teaching me very hands-on, you know, the design thinking principles, the ideas of user testing and going out and the way that she packaged it. I mean,
is 4th grade?
Yeah, in 5th grade is when we really started doing a lot of stuff. Yeah.
See, this is another one of those things. This is a really cutting-edge school. I mean, if you're not only doing all the outdoor stuff, but you're doing all this user testing and design in the 5th grade. I mean, that's really setting you up to think like,
absolutely.
Oh, look at these things. Why did people design them this way? How can I design things?
Yep. What do we learn from this and that? Yeah. And it's wonderful because Stanford is, you know, kind of pioneered some of those approaches, and she learned a lot of that from Stanford, her time at Stanford, and it kind of had a connection with the university. So she'd take us to the D school there and have us learn from some of the people there. And then when we got older in high school, a couple friends and I, we'd actually go back to the D school and help teach workshops for graduates and stuff like that, because they're like, oh, if a kid can do this, then surely I can do this, right? And we were like, yeah, it is this easy. You know, we've been doing it since we were kids, not because we're, you know, super geniuses, right? But just because we were taught the framework and given, you know, the attention from someone who was dedicated to help teaching us. And so that kind of mindset, the design thinking mindset, and, you know, a lot of people like think it's very hand wavy and, oh, you know, applying design thinking to this. And I do think it gets overused a little bit. You know, some people think, oh, design thinking is the solution to everything. I don't think that's necessarily true, but in it, it does kind of unlock this way of thinking for you that's, okay, there's a problem. Instead of thinking about, oh, I suddenly have the best solution to this problem, the first thing I ever thought of is the best solution to this problem. You have no idea what you're talking about, right? You got to go talk to the people who are experiencing the problem. If the problem is happening to you, reflecting on it deeply, going to others who are experiencing the problem or have the need, as I call it.
That's how I feel about the current version 1 of social media networks that we kind of have, the 10, 15-year incumbents, that this is not the last call networks. We gotta
absolutely
update the code, make these better.
Absolutely.
Now I know I wanna hit on so many so much more to talk about.
Yeah.
So this design thinking mindset that you're talking about now, it gave you and in the travel and everything, it kind of gave you the edge to see that, you know, you wanted to create the new housing style, this cross-grade housing system at Nueva.
Yeah. So that I started doing that in my junior year.
Okay.
Of high school.
Yep.
So learned a lot. In 7th grade was the first so in 5th grade and stuff like that, we were doing design thinking projects. We were, interviewing people at Kaiser Permanente and thinking about medical solutions. 7th grade.
It never ends, this stream of brilliant things, interviewing people at Kaiser Permanente. Wow, yeah.
7th grade was the first time we ever did entrepreneurship. So 7th grade is they said actually figure out a product type of idea. So me and one of my friends, we thought about it was before
this video
tile.
is brought to you by Nueva School.
Really great place. I can tell you, it is a really great place, and I hope it really does stay to maintain its current way of operation. And I'll say, as a graduate, someone who loves Nueva very deeply, I will say I'm worried about the impact the college process is having on the school, because it used to end in 8th grade, so there was kind of a hard stop, and so it didn't really feel the pressure that was coming down from the college system to make kids that looked a certain way or anything. So they had a ton of freedom, and these kids would, these kids are really bright kids. They'd go into high school and they'd adapt to their new high school, and then they'd look like a great candidate for college, without messing with that really nice Nueva experience. And what happened in the high school, and I think it's still leagues ahead in a lot of the ways it was doing things from other high schools.
Give me a young person that doesn't have any of their SAT scores or any of that crap, and if they know how to do entrepreneurship, if they know how to interview industry people and build products, if they know how to do that, if they know how to be in the woods and make with their hands, it's game over.
It's game over.
That person's way better than the SAT.
Right, and the problem is our high school had to, the first 2 years, I'll even push it. I'll say the first year there was only us, the freshmen, and then sophomores. And so there was still no college pressure. It's when we became sophomores and the sophomores became juniors is when they started feeling, oh crap, we really gotta start having, people come in and talk about the college process, start getting SAT scores and stuff like this.
Test scores. Yeah.
Right, and our first graduating class sent 10 of the 70 kids to Stanford, 10, 1/7 of the grade, and set this bar that's what our school produces. So it was all happy, running around in the meadow before, when it was just the middle school. And it was all happy, Nueva, until we got our first class into college. And then the parents who used to be looking at, Castlelia, Crystal Bay, all these other schools around here, start saying, oh wait, is Nueva the one that's gonna get our kid into college? Right?
Oh,
and you get this pressure. So thankfully we got out, I think, right before the worst of it is happening. And I love my school so much. I don't know what the effect of this is, but I know that a lot more people are applying now to get into the school. And a lot of kids that I think, might learn better in a traditional environment. There are a lot of kids that learn great in a traditional environment, and some of the discontent students I found at my school were the students who were like, why can't I know my grade at every time? Why, don't I learn the rules and then get to apply them? Why is it all experiential and kind of, wishy-washy, which is great for me, but not great for other kids, Yeah. And I think that's one of the problems is when you don't have that Bloom 2, when you don't have that, mentor-student relationship, when it's kind of pre-packaged, you have to be really careful the package you're stepping into, because you have to make sure it's more aligned than the other ones, right? And so I think we can get this problem where if a lot of kids come to an environment like this that would actually do better in traditional environments, would actually feel more at home in traditional environments, you're putting them in an environment maybe they've never been exposed to, maybe they don't like, right? Because it gets them into college or something like that. It's number one, it's not great for them. Number two, it influences and changes the culture of the school to be, oh, well, it's all fine and good, that they can run around the forest, but college. And so, when are they getting their SAT scores and stuff like that, which is something we never used to care about. So I really hope sincerely that the fact that our grade sent a bunch of kids to really great colleges and the grade above us, and I think the current year is also going to do really well in the college process, doesn't influence the school. I think it will, unfortunately, but
of course it's influencing it at extreme rates. I mean, that first moment of inflection when 1 out of every 7 students from the class got into Stanford, eyeballs
Yep.
Nueva.
Everyone was looking at other schools saying, oh, Nueva is this hippie school, who cares, right? And then suddenly, I think all the parents in Silicon Valley started looking at, not all the parents, but a lot of them that may have kind of dismissed it before said, oh wait, is that the golden ticket? Is that the school that's going to get our kids there, as opposed to da-da-da-da-da? So,
and then the other problem of all the kids coming with different learning styles, and you gotta have the right learning styles for the kids, and more of the mentorships, and that's a very, very interesting what you bring up, and how often that happens around the world for these schools that had these moments of shining, and then were impacted by the collegiate
or running up against a system that is static, or is kind of these like squatting, existing kind of traditional systems. You know, when that happens, you know, I think bad things happen.
That's huge. They are basically just squatting, and so let's get to
we're going all these tangents. So for the house system, so learned a lot about kind of how to implement ideas you have and whatnot, and back to the idea that, you know, when I was a freshman, there was us, and then there was the sophomores. What was happening when we started to become a bigger school is that we had never had upperclassmen. So we had never learned how to make cross-grade connections beyond the fact that, you know, there was 200 kids in a school, you're going to know everyone, because, you know, there was like 70 kids per grade, plus the teachers when we were there the first year. So when we got our new freshman class in, and we were sophomores and they were juniors, I was like, something feels off. You know, we're not really interacting with the freshmen, and the freshmen definitely aren't interacting with the juniors, because the juniors have never had the experience of being real upperclassmen, and we had never had the experience of being the middle child. You know, just like none of this stuff was happening, And when they became seniors and I became a junior, you know, I barely knew the names of the freshmen. I went out of my way to, but you know, a lot of the seniors didn't, a lot of even the sophomores didn't.
Of them,
There's only 70 of us, right? So I was like, okay, something needs to change. And how I met you is through Jeremy. And Jeremy Yoon, son of Jun Yoon, Jeremy Yoon was my buddy in the middle school. So I loved that system in the middle school, and I wish we had something kind of similar to it in the high school. But I thought, oh, we could really make this exciting, we could really dress this up, and kind of my love for design and stuff like that came into it. And so the house system, what that means, because we didn't live on campus, what the house system means is that 1/4 of every grade was put in one of 4 houses together. So 25% of each class is in a house together. And if you have the banners, you can show them.
Throw the banners up.
And so
you design these.
And I designed these. So I actually designed these, cut these, sewed these by hand. They're 12 feet long. With my aunt on a Persian sewing machine that was breaking down like halfway through, and we had to call my grandma and be like, wait, how do we fix this? And she was like, oh, like just do this. So we fixed it. But that was a really fun experience with her. But I designed these to represent the different houses. So
interesting, and this is how the seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen would integrate.
Yes, so the idea was that, you know, 1/4 of each grade would be in each of the houses. They'd be with, you know, the other grades grouped like that. Then there would be families, which are 2 people from each grade in a family. So 2 seniors, 2 juniors, 2 sophomores, 2 freshmen. So you have a couple people in each grade that you know. And then there were house meetings where the whole house would get together and you see people from all the different grades. And then there were like field days and like games and competitions where you would, you know, do tug of war and beanbag toss, all this stuff to try to build like kind of community within the houses.
This is real community.
That was the goal.
That
was really the goal.
You're kind of taking as well and moving into real world now.
Definitely.
Which we're going to talk about. This is so cool.
Okay. Yeah. So that was kind of.
What are the names of the 4?
So they're named after constellations. The only one that's not named after the constellation is Lycos, which is the wolf, because lupus is wolf in Latin and is the constellation, but it's also an autoimmune disease. So you just have to be careful with those things. So that was the initial name, and then we realized, oh, okay, we got to change it. And that's really what you learn with this sort of stuff. Is we made a bunch of mistakes on the rollout, you know. like that, which I just didn't realize the name. We were, scrambling to get the names out, and I didn't even look it up really, because I knew what it was in Latin, and I saw it on Google Translate. I was like, okay, we're fine. And it actually caused a scandal the first week that we put it out, because someone's grandpa had it. So that was really helpful training for me to understand. When you launch something, you got to be real careful with how you do it, and you got to be real careful with the names of things and whatnot.
But then Lycos was the name of someone's dog that died, and then they complained, and then you changed it to something else. So there's always
going to be something. And it was a really great experience, because we ran into a bunch of problems throughout. Like the first week, people were getting really, really into it. People were like howling like wolves across the schoolyard.
These three?
Oh yeah, so this one is Lycos, which is the wolf. You got Ursa, which is the bear. You got Aquila, which is the eagle, and you have Ceres, which is the stag. We were doing the Serenian hind, but it was a little too long, so we Ceres. And there was actually an interesting design challenge when we updated the brandings. Me and my really good friend and partner in a lot of these ventures that I've done, Om. Like OM, like the sound when you meditate. Om, exactly. Shout out to Om. Yeah, hey Om.
So he was working on a lot of.
Yeah, so we in my senior year we worked on it together. In junior year, I was working with a girl in my grade named Jessa, and we rolled this out, and then Om and I kind of redid the branding our senior year to kind of leave it in a good place.
Yeah. And it's still rolling.
It's still rolling. Yeah.
Cool.
And we had some lieutenants that we were working with in the younger grades that are running it now at the school, and I need to go back and check on it to see how everything's going.
This is such a good idea for that class.
Right, intergenerational. That was really the goal.
Because the generation is now one grade. Like I know it's so
right?
ridiculous. Micro gradients of generations. This is very cool.
So this was the
family that you'd get to would be cool, because then the two seniors could mentor the two juniors, the two sophomores.
Exactly.
They could learn from what the freshmen are learning. It's very cool.
And if you look at the MIT, it's actually part of the inspiration of the name for Pantheon, which is the project I'm working on now. But MIT has this thing called MIT Pantheon. It's in their media lab, where they basically look at the cultural production of history, of figures over history, and they rank them based on like how many people, or like which people have kind of created the most like cultural production. And the top 5, I think it goes, I think it's Plato, Socrates, Jesus, Aristotle, Alexander the Great.
Whoa.
And if you look at those 5 people, what I realized that they all have in common, besides Jesus, right? Jesus is the only one who could get in there besides these guys. These guys knew each other, right? Socrates is the mentor of Plato. Plato is the mentor of Aristotle. Aristotle is the mentor of Alexander the Great until he was 16.
Damn.
And Jesus, probably one of the most impactful figures in history, is the only guy who can get in that chain of mentorship. Because that's what separates us as humans, right? Ants, one of them goes off a cliff, one of them walks the right way. It takes a whole, biological generation for that mistake to propagate, right? The fact that ant doesn't have kids, or I guess ants are a bad idea because they have the queen. That lion, right? The fact that that lion's genes don't propagate is like the learning that happens there, right? But humans can actually stack. You make a mistake in your life, you name a house the wrong name, you can tell someone right then, don't make the mistake that I made, and you're stacking knowledge on top of each other in your own lifetime. And so that was a big inspiration there, was seeing, the 4 of the 5 most impactful people who have created the most cultural production in all of history knew each other, right? We're mentors. And pass that knowledge down. Yeah, of course Alexander the Great is going to be able to conquer my people, in 30 years, because he knew, because he had the intergenerational knowledge from Socrates, from Plato, from Aristotle, coming down all into him.
Yeah.
And he never lost a battle, right? How do you do that? You don't. The only way you do that is when the forefathers of modern philosophy are basically your uncles.
Yes.
That's the only way you do that. And so that's something I've thought a lot about. And so yeah, that was the house system.
How can we get that juiciest, cutting edge knowledge down into the minds of children as they're being born into the world? Yeah.
You know, we need dumb people. Will you stop that? You know, I just don't understand what you don't understand about the whole natural selection manipulation thing. And, you know, they don't want a bunch of informed, critical thinking citizens creating a better world. There's no money in peace, love, and understanding. Knock off your shit.
You know, that's kind of the problem, right? Is that there's no money in doing like the great stuff. And so in high school, did these other two projects. One of them was an app, one of them was a design firm with Ohm. But in college, what I'm really excited about,
and we can pull up quick some of those designs.
Oh yeah, we have some of the designs. Yeah, I went over that quickly, but this is my dribble.
Swap was first.
Swap was first. Yeah, that was for really quick contact info sharing. So I'd have my phone in your pocket.
Communication.
Yeah, basically, the idea was, you know, we were meeting all these amazing people in high school for the first time, meeting all these amazing people around Silicon Valley, and just it being super clunky to get in touch with them. Yeah. So that it was kind of making that experience a little more seamless.
It's still clunky with business cards. And
it's still clunky. We didn't solve it.
We never actually solved it.
Yeah, and because we stopped the company in sophomore year because we were like, all right, now we got to focus on college, right? And then the thing we could do alongside the college process and alongside the work we were doing was freelance design work in this design firm with me and Ohm. So,
and this is your Dribble account.
So this is my Dribble account. So that's a logo we made. This one actually we didn't. That one is just like a personal design. But some of the other ones are ones we made for companies. Thank you.
Yeah. So you made some of these for companies.
For companies.
That's cool. Yeah.
That one's personal as well. That was actually for a friend. But the
Orion Creative.
Yeah, Orion Creative. Yeah, that was for a company called AccuSense.
Cool.
Cool. And the idea was that we kind of had this niche market where we would get basically really technical founders coming out of great universities who had these amazing ideas but didn't really know how to present them to investors and stuff like that. So Ohm and I would take those in. This is Viz. Yeah, this is a company. I think they're actually doing really great now. And that logo's up on their website and everything. Kofa, their security company. Allocate. We really love that one. Really great company to work with. And those were a lot of fun because, you know, they would come in with nothing. Right, they'd come in with
as like 16.
Yeah, I think we were 16. Yeah, 16.
16-year-olds were designing the logos and decks for the big the pitches.
Yeah, the pitches for we had one at Y Combinator, or a couple at Y Combinator. We had our Viz deck went in front of the FDA because they had to get FDA approval and stuff like that.
Damn, it's all about the stimuli at young ages, because then this is why you get certain kids that are making the designs and doing the competitions and all this other kind of great stuff, and versus ones that are that haven't gotten the right nutrients. Yeah.
Right. So love for design that kind of persisted throughout my life, and having the amazing partner of Ohm working on this stuff with him has just been amazing because we kind of handle different parts of the process, and I think that's also another thing I would say. Mentorship is super important, but also having kind of collaborators to work on things with and have someone to bounce ideas off of, because
totally.
And we always say this to each other because now we're in college and we have to call and stuff like that. But our best ideas come when we're talking to each other. I'll have an idea or he'll have an idea, but it's only really when the other person hears it and is able to say, "Oh, that reminds me this or that it really goes to the next level of being something amazing." You
have to have a good tennis player on the other side, because if it's just mundane convo, it's not going to be a good round of idea tennis.
And so, I'm working with him on the new projects that we're working on, and
with Ohm still.
With Ohm still, and with a couple other of my really good friends who are kind of specialized in different fields.
And you did some neuroscience work with CMU.
Did some neuroscience work. Yeah, I was really interested in human-computer interaction. So kind of the way that we're interacting with technology, and I thought about it a lot, and I was like, all right, I think the way this is going is that brain-computer interfaces are going to be kind of the thing. So I wanted to really understand that. So I went to CMU, which is where they're doing some of the really cutting-edge stuff. They tried to get the PI I was working with for Neuralink, for Elon Musk's Neuralink, and he was like, no, I'm just going to stay and really work on this thing myself. himself. So he, really incredible guy, Mason Chamanzar, Persian guy at CMU in the Department of Electrical Engineering, I think. And they were doing these probes for brain stimulation and recording. And that really, you know, I went there, I emailed him, I said, hey, I do a bunch of design stuff. It looks like you're doing a grant proposal. I can do the diagrams for your grant proposal. I'm okay at biology. I mean, I don't really have any formal training in it, but I just want to come and learn from you guys. But I'll do design for you. That's what I'll give, and you can help teach me about this. And so I went there and I designed their diagrams for their grant proposal, which they sent to the National Science Foundation, and I think they got it. They got, like, you know, a lot of money for it, which was really, really cool. And that kind of goes back to, you know, taking the complex idea and making it something simpler. Yeah. But kind of got.
Ron, you okay if we chat a little longer?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Am I okay? Am I okay with that?
You down?
You got any money?
Yeah.
Why don't you put a tip jar?
You got any money? Where's my tip jar?
Put a tip jar down.
Where's my tip jar? Yeah. Okay. Keep rolling. Let's go to you know, you're speaking on you know, you're doing the designs, and the designs were going. You got a grant proposal, which is very exciting, and so you learned a lot about, you know, neuroscience,
BCIs and stuff like that.
Which
got
kind
of freaked out, honestly, because I was like, whoa, this is actually could be real scary. You know, if we actually get this stuff to work, you're not even living in the real world anymore. This isn't even a VR headset. This is like, you know, complete simulation, right? This is your brain in there getting stimulation not from the world. So I was like, we're getting into some really weird territory. So I actually got really kind of scared and turned off from a lot of those ideas that I think a lot of people are really fascinated with about, oh, you know, full simulation, full brain computer interface. I actually seeing it in person and seeing kind of some of the tests they're doing with rats, and the rats were living a completely different reality. You know, thinking it's hot when it's not hot, thinking they're supposed to run in circles, all these sorts of crazy stuff. I was like, okay, this is not where I want to be going. I think I want to operate in the real world with real people and stuff like that. So a lot of my focus changed to stuff like the house system, like real systems, like physical systems of people, like kind of these human operating systems that can lead to kind of these amazing experiences that I was able to experience growing up, and really expanding that for a lot of other people. So that's kind of the major project I'm working on now with Ohm and with my other friends. It's the Pantheon is the collective of people working on this stuff. So that's like, you know, me, Ohm, my friend Jeremy, and some of my other friends.
How does what you made with the house system at Nueva school, how does that become Pantheon in the real world? How does you know, me as someone that's 26 have a little family with someone that's 24, that's 22, that's 20? You know, how do we have that?
Right.
How do we all mentor each other?
Yeah. So the idea, so the basic like pitch, if you will, behind the big idea behind the Pantheon is that thing that culture is getting pulled apart, and that you know, we are going into college, we're going to leave college, and then what are we going to be chasing, right? We're going to be chasing money, we're going to be chasing status, and we're going to be chasing comfort, or that's at least what we're kind of incentivized to chase, and what a lot of other people around us are chasing, right? The problem with those three things is that they plateau, right? You get to a certain level of income, you get to a certain level of comfort, you get to a certain level of status, and this is after your basic needs are met, of course. And you get to those levels and you realize, you know, it's not actually that much better to go from a small boat to a big boat. It's not that much different to go from a nice house to a mansion, you know, to da-da-da-da-da-da. Those things, you know, they make you real excited the first year, the second year, third year, fourth year. Are you still getting the same fulfillment, right?
You got to understand, though, Ari, that's a great attitude, but we have to wait for people to kind of possibly just, you know, die off. There's a lot of people that just don't have, you know, they want to just keep going and get more and get a bigger boat. So thank you so much for realizing that it just doesn't work that way. That's not in our best interest. We're destroying the planet. We're destroying each other. Right. So keep up the good work again. The world is counting on you.
Well, how do you get sustained meaning?
So how do you get sustained meaning? That's the question.
Fulfillment.
Right. So if the curve is plateauing, if the curve of fulfillment is plateauing from these other means, and I think people know this, I really think it's only a couple people kind of at the top who want this thing to keep going. I think kids my age, kids going to college, you know, people your age, people older than you, they're not like saying, oh yeah, this is working great for me. I'm feeling super satisfied with my life right now and I'm gonna fight tooth and nail until it goes away. You know, they're saying, I wanna live a good life, I wanna, you know, exist and have kids and you know, eat good food and have a nice time, watch a couple of Netflix shows. You know, people aren't trying to put a hole in the system and then end up in anarchy. Like, so you need, I think, a new model as opposed to just saying the current model sucks. I think a lot of people over history have said the current model sucks.
But we're trying to make a new model and nobody's buying it. We're trying to do it in legislation and people got their head rammed so far up their ass.
I agree.
We're waiting for leaders to get us out of this mess.
And so I think that's why you can't wait for those people to do it, and that's why we're trying to do it ourselves. So the idea is that the things that really do fulfill people are autonomy, autonomy, which is having the ability to do what you want to do and kind of have kind of variation in your life. You know, people are on these little commute circles where they wake up, they get in the train, they get to work, they come home, seeing the same 4 people. It's really not that interesting. You don't have that much autonomy to break out of it. New exhibit opens at the Natural History Museum. I love Natural History Museums, want to go see it. You know, my partner's going to be like, what are you doing? You're going to leave me and the kids at home to go see a Natural History Museum, right? That's not how it works, right? But
go as a family.
But you live in a community, and it's different. So I'll get to that. So autonomy is really important. Having a purpose, something that gets you up in the morning, is really exciting. That's really important. Having mastery, being good at a skill, is really important. Some of the happiest people around me are people that have a really good skill. My friend Om, incredible designer, right? He can always fall back on that skill. No matter what happens, he's always going to have that. My friend Jeremy, incredible mechanical engineer, right? He knows. He has an idea, he can get down to it, get in the shop, you know, in a couple of days have something working. Same thing with Om, and that's incredibly, deeply, deeply, deeply fulfilling, as opposed to people who have never been encouraged to follow something that interests them, have been told that that won't get you into college, or that won't help you in life, or whatever. You know, I think a lot of people would look and tell Om or Jeremy, you know, why are you, because these stuff start when you're a kid.
That's right.
This stuff starts when Om's sitting there sketching stuff, or Jeremy's, you know, tinkering with stuff. It's the parent letting them do that, or the teachers letting them do that, or fostering that, or say, oh, have you heard about this, or have you heard about that, and bring them along that path. And having mastery, that's the third thing. So autonomy, purpose, and having mastery is so crucial to fulfillment. Because it allows you to actually achieve your purpose. A lot of people have purposes, right? A lot of people don't have the mastery required to achieve that purpose, and that's a problem. So autonomy, purpose, mastery, and the last two things, which are equally important.
It's interesting that someone can get purpose, seek something that brings them meaning, but then this mastery, the skill sets, the means to get to that purpose.
It doesn't exist. That's incredibly dissatisfying, and that can almost be worse than not having a purpose, because you have a purpose, you're really passionate about a cause, and you don't know how to do anything about it. Terribly, terribly, terribly demoralizing, gives you a feeling of helplessness, is really bad. So having the mastery along with the purpose is really crucial. And then the fourth thing, belonging, feeling like you're part of a community, feeling that people love you and appreciate you, not just because of the work that you produce or the SAT scores that you produce, or you know, the grades that you get, but really can look you in the eyes and to say, I love you, I accept you, kind of unconditionally. And that's a real sense of belonging. And that's really important for people. I think a lot of people today feel like they're commodified on Instagram for their looks, for the places they've been, for the things they've done. I think people just want to, at the end of the day, be loved, right? And just be seen. And that's a true sense of belonging. And that doesn't take 500 followers. That doesn't take 10,000 followers, right? It doesn't take any number of followers. That takes one person. That takes 2 people. That takes 5 people that are around you, that you can always fall back on. And you know, that's not kind of where we're going with these social media systems that are incentivizing you to get a ton of followers that don't care about you, right? It's really about those close connections. So belonging, and the last one, gratitude. You know, you have that up on your wall right there, and it's true. You can have all these things, you can have everything you want in the world, but if you don't sit down and look around you and say, you know, I'm so thankful to be here. I'm so thankful for the people who have got me here, for the opportunity. You know, even me sitting here, you know, I'm incredibly grateful to be able to even talk about these stories and have my mom have taken me to all these places and have, you know, amazing brothers and friends like Om and Jeremy who have been there for me and nurtured me. And you know, to have met you and to be able to talk about these experiences, I'm incredibly grateful for that. And that's incredibly fulfilling, right? It's incredibly fulfilling. There's an effect called the doubling effect. When I look at my hand, I think it's part 17 of the optical cortex that's being fired. If I close my eyes, if I think about my hand, it's part 17 of the optical cortex being fired at a lesser capacity, but it's being fired. The idea is you experience a beautiful moment. Certain things are happening in your mind. You think about it later, you journal about it, you write it down, you think about it, same feelings are being fired. So you're doubling the happiness you got from that. That's twice the amount of happiness that you're already having just because of gratitude, right? That's incredibly, incredibly, incredibly fulfilling.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the five pillars. You have autonomy, you have purpose, you have mastery, you have belonging, and then you have gratitude. And then so the question is, what does a life look like that's based on those principles? The solution that kind of we've come up with at this time, and we're doing a lot of validation of it, we're going to be trying to test it out. The idea is that you make a community of real people, not digitally. You get up to 150 people in one space, and that's because 150 people is is there a name for
Dunbar
it?
number, yeah.
Dunbar number?
Dunbar.
Dunbar number, yeah. So the Dunbar number, archaeologists have seen this when looking at Paleolithic communities. Colonialists saw this when they encountered hunter-gatherers in the 1800s, that the bands were about 150. Modern analyses of the human neocortex have shown that you can only keep track of about 150 people on a deep level. So that's kind of our number. That's as far as we want to make your immediate community to be. So get 150 people basically in a house, in a big community thing. We don't really have spaces that look like this. So you say a house, people are like, oh, that's super cramped. It's not a house. It's more, it would have to be designed differently. The built
That's Summer of Love hippie shit, though, that they just try to, they did their best to get rid of that, and they did.
It is. And I think
Charlie Manson took care of that shit.
The problem is I think they did it a little unrealistically in the way that they did it, and I'll explain why. Because they isolated themselves from the rest of society, and I think we can't do that this time.
Yes,
we can't do that this time.
You can't build this in the middle of nowhere.
No.
This is like...
This is in the middle of
Silicon Valley.
This is
150, 150.
It sells. It sells, right?
Yeah.
We actually call it the atomic system, because 150 people is the atom. Then you put multiple atoms next to each other, you get a molecule. Put multiple molecules next to each other, you get a cell. You put multiple cells next to each other, you get an organism. Things based on nature usually work out, the best, and we're kind of going with that model. So the idea is that you have 150 people in this space, and you might be like, wait, the old style community, how does that give you autonomy, right? Don't you have all these obligations that you wouldn't have as an individual? It's actually a little bit different than that, because, like I said, when you're in a nuclear family, so much is resting on your shoulders. You're the breadwinner, right? You're the parent, you're the mentor of the kid, you're the enforcer, right? You're the playmate, you're everything for this kid. You're everything for your partner, you're everything for the household, right? There's this enormous weight on your shoulders. And when you're in a community, you have other kids that can be the playmates of the kids, you have other parents that can be the mentors of the kids, you have other people that can be stepping in. Beta 2 Sigma, what is it?
Bloom 2 Sigma.
Bloom 2 Sigma,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You have these other people doing those things.
Yeah,
and
that's the communal
impact.
Taking care of each other, taking a little bit of the burden
Absolutely.
Off. This is very cool. Autonomy,
purpose, mastery, belonging, gratitude.
Man, those just couple lines of code embedded into everywhere around the world would be great. Yeah, and just making a social fabric that can handle that, those five, and how do you envision the implementation of the Pantheon into the, because you have to enter new code into the old code, and then make people move. Want to move into the new code. And
I could go into detail about kind of a lot of the interior systems we've thought about of how do you educate kids in this system, how do you work in this system. We have a system called the Amplified Team system that is how we do work, and I could talk forever about this stuff, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, and Alan would talk to you forever. Yeah, sure.
So I won't go into
that.
that.
Yeah, I want to see John. I got to meet John Bennett. He's playing at Martini's. He's an inspiring author.
Well, that's why you got all dressed up. You gonna put your disco shoes on tonight?
What do you mean? No, I'm not. I'm just going down. I want to see my friend there.
So I won't go into all that. Hopefully, we'll have all that stuff online at some point.
Okay, online, and we can put a link in the bio when that's done.
Yeah.
And then, where would you want to do a first? I want to unpack that with you at another show.
We can do another show.
But
So basically, this summer we're doing the test run of it. So we're gonna go out into the world. We're gonna go to some of the blue zones.
What does that mean?
Blue zones are the places where people live the longest. They're like 5 pockets around the world. Yeah, Okinawa. Yeah. There's one in Sardinia. There's one in Greece. We're thinking of going to some of these places, hands-on, kind of the design thinking model of user testing, right? Talking to people, learning, interviewing them, documenting this process, trying to do real research on what's making these people's lives so fulfilling, to validate our assumptions that those 5 things are really important, because those are, I didn't pull those. Pulls out of nowhere. That's books and studies and stuff that we've collated, or coalesced. But we want to also get some hands-on, experiential, testimonial stuff, and then do that for a couple weeks, really out in the world. Then come sit down and say, so how are we going to edit our existing model that we've thought of? How are we going to adapt it to the number of people that we have or the constraints that we have this summer? Making a prototype, and then running that probably in Silicon Valley in a house with the people that we can gather this summer who are excited about the idea, and testing it and documenting how it goes, documenting if we do feel that sense of belonging, if we do feel that sense of autonomy, and really trying to be honest with ourselves about it. Because if we're wrong, we don't want to live in that society.
Correct.
Right? So trying to be as honest as we can about that process.
That reminds us a lot about what we were learning from June, Jeremy, and Conrad about interdependent capitalism. A lot of that strengthening of the social fabric, the inclusive fitness, the inclusive stakeholding of communities with each other is a lot of what Sardinia, Okinawa, and I just feel like propagating that more around the world. Is a fantastic idea, and just will help so much with a lot of the ailments that we see developing right now.
So prototyping it this summer and working on our own kind of like startup projects that are kind of social impact minded during that time, and those kind of being able to generate capital for the future, for future things. So the Pantheon's kind of this holding company. We have kind of these ventures that we're doing, but we're also prototyping these communities. The ventures, provide resources to make the community run.
So this summer you hope to do after research, to do
to live in a prototype community, and then work on an actual business that's like kind of unrelated, but that can provide funds to do that.
Great, and we would like to cover that. So let's cover how that's going.
That'd be great.
Let's cover the research that you did over the
That'd
summer.
Be fantastic.
Yeah, let's do that.
And then if that works, or if it doesn't work, regrouping from that, and then testing out things over the next few summers, and then when we're out of college, doing it for an extended period of time, not just a summer, but seeing if we can do it for a year, 2 years, depending on the model that we've created. I'm sure it'll be different by that time because we'll have learned so much from our own experience and from the experience of others. But that's how we do it in the real world. Is we actually physically make the community, and there are a lot of people I've talked to at Stanford who are excited about the idea. There are a lot of friends, around the world and around the U.S. that are excited about the idea. So we just really need to validate it. We really need to say, yep, this actually works. And then I think other people will be ready to make the jump and say, okay, I could do something else with my summer, or I still can be an intern at wherever during the summer, but I'm going to live in this community as opposed to my own apartment. I'm gonna adopt this model, and that's the idea. Is that it's not like a business, it's not a company or anything. It's just like a framework for how to live. And if we're able to validate it, then people can take it and kind of put their own spins on it.
Correct, and that's a very crucial part. Taking the framework and being able to deploy it wherever already around the world.
Bangladesh, Japan, Syria, anywhere you want to do it. Hopefully it's malleable enough that those people, it can adapt to their religion, their way of life, their resources on hand.
Yes. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I'm really excited to follow up on that. I mean, we have a ton more to talk about. We didn't get to. We do have to.
Yes.
We'll have to save that, especially Ishmael. That's a very exciting book that I think you and I were having a great conversation about slowing down and really thinking about every seed that is being born into the world and giving that the right nutrients to flower.
Right.
And that's why we see this paper airplane that's kind of like, instead of a very robust one.
Right.
Yeah, the very quick.
Exactly.
And some people propose that those are the challenges. That is kind of the, anyway, we can get into that, and we can still get into all the little micro gradients of the generations, generations, which is so interesting too, and what's happening. So we'll have to have you back on to explore all that.
Beautiful.
Ari,
Beautiful.
on the way out, obviously, this is a beautiful image of the cosmos. So we are going to ask you, do you think we are alone in the cosmos?
Maybe. Yeah, I think maybe. I think there's a good chance that the great filter is what we're going through right now, and that if we don't adapt, if we don't free culture from the place that's being torn in, that's a fundamental axiom of what happens when civilizations think they're better than the circle of life, think they're better than the earth, and it kills them. So I think if we don't adapt, we're definitely, not gonna be showing ourselves to other civilizations, and maybe that's what's happened before. When you get to a certain level of technological evolution, you can't overcome, the basic biological stuff, and it pulls you apart. So maybe that's a great filter. I mean, of course we're in the tiny arm of the galaxy, so we wouldn't really be close to the cultural center anyways. But for my argument, yes, we are alone. Yeah.
Yeah, the Fermi filter is such a fascinating conversation that we'll talk about more.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
Mm-hmm.
This is simulation, so we must ask you, are we in a simulation?
Is it okay to say it doesn't matter if we are?
Please explain.
Because I think, obviously the name of the show is The Simulation, and I absolutely love the work you guys are doing here, so I'm not going to attack the concept of do we live in a simulation.
And that's not even the central thesis of why the show is called it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think, people like to really get down and think about, are we in a simulation? I just think the implications of it aren't that relevant. Like, there are people dying in the world, there are people depressed and anxious and deeply hurt and lonely in the world. And I think that's a much more interesting problem to tackle, is like what's happening to us in the simulation, regardless of it's a simulation or not. We're not doing too well. So how do we work on that? So I think
you still don't know if everything outside of you is real, though.
That's true.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to reflect on myself and think more about this.
What he's telling you is it doesn't matter. Just try to do something. Get in the pit and try to love someone.
That's the idea.
Try to love someone.
That's the idea.
Try and make the world a better place. Yeah, because exactly. You level up, period. Yeah. No matter what.
Right.
Level up. Make the world better no matter what.
Yeah. Simulation or not, this is what we have. So
So level the hell up.
So let's
okay, last question. What is the most beautiful thing in the world?
What is the most beautiful thing in the world? The love of a mother.
Yeah.
Hands down. And on every level, right? I mean that like Homo sapiens, like my mom, but I also mean like Mother Earth, right? Yeah. Not to get too out there, but
well, you had a pretty dope mother, You were talking about her earlier, and she was quite.
My dad's a baller too. Don't forget my dad.
I love my dad.
Yeah, Marvin Gaye got shot when he just thanked his mother. His dad shot him like the next day. Were you aware of that? Do you know who Marvin Gaye is?
Right?
Yeah,
Let's get it on.
Sure. He thanked his mother, and then his father shot him dead.
I can do a whole other talk show on my dad. I love my dad.
Yeah, I can do a whole other talk show on my dad. That's beautiful. So, Mother than Mother Earth and
yeah, I mean just the gift of life in general.
Of life, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, I love smart young people. I love it. It gives us so much hope.
Like yourself. I mean, you're only a couple years
I'm
older
still
than
young. Ronnie, you just called me young. Hey, that's good. That's good news. That's good news. Yeah, and I thought that, yeah. But there's something very, very special about, you know, hearing you speak this way. It's so special. And I think with more opportunities for young people to travel, to do things like Nueva School, to do things like that you were learning
Absolutely.
there. I think, and with this really strong multidisciplinary, deep time perspective on reality, I think we're in good hands. As long as we can spread that out to more and more young people that are being born.
That's what I mean. That's what this show is doing. We're trying to proliferate those ideas.
Yeah,
I mean, we need to get these writings up online and get that stuff out there. So.
That's right. This has been such a pleasure.
Such a pleasure. Thank you. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
I've loved having you unleash yourself on this program.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the ability to on the platform.
Beautiful. Yeah, as we were saying with Cassandra, we are adopting you.
Please.
Yeah, you are officially
more mentors.
You're being adopted. We are, you know, your students as well. So yeah, that's absolutely. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We love that you've been with us this long. We would love to hear from you in the comments below. Please let us know your thoughts. Have more conversations with people around you about the conversations that we were having. And add your own spin and taste to them. Huge shout out to Ron Vargas for producing and directing. We love you so much, Ronnie. And support the artists and entrepreneurs that you believe in, everyone. You know, Ari's links are below, our links are below. Support us. Help people manifest their dreams into the world. Manifest your own dreams into the world. Go build, go create. We love you so very much. Thank you for tuning in. Build the future. Peace.